Daratumumab is an anti-CD38 monoclonal antibody which targets cells expressing CD38. CD38 is a surface marker that is ubiquitously expressed on all cell types, and plasma cells specifically have highly overexpressed levels of CD38. When patients with myeloma become refractory to proteasome inhibitors and immunomodulatory drugs, their overall survival is fairly short. In two studies done, one about 3 years ago, the overall survival of those patients was about 9 months. In a recent update that I'm presenting a couple of days later as a poster, their overall survival is about 8 months or so. So we need new platforms and new drugs for those patients. The objective of doing this combined analysis was to provide an update on the experience with the dose of daratumumab that has been recently FDA approved. The dose is 16 milligram per kilogram. The two studies were the Gen 501 study, which was the original phase 1-2 study that led to the dose of 16 milligram per kilogram, and the Sirius study was a phase 2 study where the 16 milligram per kilogram dose was evaluated for its clinical efficacy along with safety. So a total of 148 patients were combined for this analysis, and the study presented safety as well as efficacy data. Both the studies had relapsed refractory myeloma patients with a median of 5 prior lines of therapy. So this was a heavily pretreated, heavily refractory myeloma patient population. All the patients had been exposed to a proteasome inhibitor as well as an immunomodulatory drug. And almost all the patients, or I should say majority of the patients, were double refractory. So these were patients who were refractory to both lenalidomide as well as to bortezomib. These 5 median prior lines of therapy, you have to consider the fact that the median time from the time that these patients were diagnosed to the time they were going on study was 5 years. So these patients were going through each line of therapy fairly quickly. So that just tells you about not simply the refractoriness of the disease, but the pace with which they had gone through each line of therapy. The primary results from this combined analysis pertain to the overall response, which was 31%, which is quite remarkable for a biologic in relapsed refractory myeloma. Some of these responses were quite deep, so we had stringent CRs and VGPRs. This is the first time that a biologic was showing these kind of data in this kind of patient population. The other very important piece was the safety piece. This drug is very well tolerated. We do see some infusion-related reactions, which we have seen with other monoclonal antibodies in the past with other heme malignancies, but they were about 48%. So more than half of the patients did not even develop infusion-related reactions. And for the ones who did develop it, majority of them developed it the first infusion. They were grade 1 and 2, and they did not occur again and were managed with standard of care measures. Another highlighted aspect of the study was the patients who had a minimal response or stable disease while on therapy. We find that their overall survival improved to around a little over 17 months, which is quite remarkable, which speaks to the different mechanism of action that daratumumab may have. And it probably has immunomodulatory effects, which I highlighted as part of my presentation. The take-home message is the combined analysis of this study shows the efficacy of this new platform drug. It is an exciting time to be a myeloma researcher and a myeloma treating physician because we have another option that can improve the survival of our patients and improve their quality of life, and without causing a lot of side effects. Given these results as a single agent in a relapsed refractory patient population, there are several large phase 3 studies that are being planned, which are combining daratumumab with other platform drugs for earlier lines of therapy, which includes early relapses, so 1 to 3 prior lines of relapses, as well as for newly diagnosed patients. And these studies in the newly diagnosed patients are targeting patients who are both transplant eligible as well as non-eligible. There are even some provocative studies being done in the smoldering myeloma patients to see if we can prolong survival and even potentially mitigate those patients from progressing to active myeloma with CRAB features by using daratumumab.